Before we begin tonight's journey, settle into a comfortable place. Let the noise of the day slowly fade away. Together, we'll travel back more than 250 years to a world lit by candlelight, where every letter was written by hand, every mile took hours to travel, and the future of an entire nation rested on the quiet decisions of ordinary people. When most people hear the words America's founding fathers, a few famous names usually come to mind. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams. Their portraits hang in museums. Their faces appear in textbooks. Their signatures are remembered around the world. But history often tells only the loudest moments. Tonight, we're going somewhere quieter. We're not following the famous speeches that filled crowded halls. Instead, we'll walk through the silent streets after sunset, listen to private conversations that never reached large audiences, and discover the small moments that helped shape the United States long before it officially became a country. The year is 1774. The American colonies stretch along the Atlantic coast, separated by forests, rivers, and long dirt roads. There are no railroads, no telephones, no electricity. News travels only as fast as a horse can run. Letters may take days, sometimes weeks to arrive. Every evening, families gather around fireplaces as candles flicker against wooden walls. Outside, the forests seem endless. Wolves still roam many regions. Owls call from the darkness. Life moves slowly. Yet beneath this peaceful rhythm, something extraordinary is beginning. Across the colonies, merchants, farmers, lawyers, printers, ministers, and craftsmen are quietly asking difficult questions. Who should decide how they are governed? How much power should a distant king have over people living thousands of miles away? Could ordinary citizens create something entirely new? These questions don't arrive all at once. They grow slowly, over many years. Long before anyone imagined signing the Declaration of Independence, disagreements were already spreading from one town to another. Many of the future founders didn't even know each other yet. George Washington spent much of his time managing Mount Vernon. Benjamin Franklin was admired as a printer, inventor, scientist, and diplomat. Thomas Jefferson preferred books over crowds, often losing himself in long hours of reading. John Adams built his reputation through careful legal arguments rather than dramatic speeches. Each man lived a different life. Each possessed different talents. Each carried different fears. None of them knew that history would one day place their names together forever. One little-known truth is that many of these men doubted themselves far more than later generations imagine. Washington worried constantly about failure. Jefferson rewrote sentences again and again, searching for the perfect words. Adams often feared that his temper might damage important friendships. Franklin believed that curiosity mattered more than certainty. They were not mythical heroes. They were thoughtful human beings living through uncertain times. As night settled over colonial America, candles burned late into the evening. Letters were folded carefully. Maps covered wooden tables. Ideas crossed the colonies one handwritten page at a time. No one could predict exactly what would happen next. Yet history was already quietly changing, and almost nobody noticed. The greatest revolutions rarely begin with fireworks. Sometimes, they begin with silence. Morning arrived gently across the American colonies. Long before church bells echoed through small towns, farmers were already awake. Horses pulled wooden wagons along narrow roads. Blacksmiths lit their furnaces before sunrise. Bakers filled the air with the smell of fresh bread, while shopkeepers carefully unlocked heavy wooden doors. For most people, life felt ordinary. Very few believed they were living through the opening pages of history. The men who would later become America's founding fathers did not spend every day discussing politics. They worried about weather, crops, business, family, and health, just like everyone else. George Washington began many mornings by walking across the fields of Mount Vernon. He paid close attention to the condition of his crops, the fences, the livestock, and the workers who kept the estate running. His notebooks were filled with careful observations about farming, soil, and daily expenses. History often remembers Washington as a fearless general, but for many years he thought of himself first as a Virginia farmer. Several hundred miles away in Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin lived a remarkably busy life. By this point, he had already earned a reputation as one of the most respected printers in North America. Yet printing newspapers was only one of his many interests. Franklin loved asking questions. Why does lightning strike? How can homes be heated more efficiently? Could libraries help ordinary people become wiser? His curiosity seemed endless. Instead of chasing fame, Franklin chased knowledge. Visitors often noticed that his home contained shelves overflowing with books, scientific instruments, maps, and handwritten notes. Every object seemed to represent another question waiting to be answered. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson often disappeared into his private library for hours at a time. Books became his quiet companions. He studied philosophy, architecture, agriculture, mathematics, music, and ancient history. He believed that ideas could change societies long before armies ever could. Friends sometimes joked that Jefferson looked happiest when surrounded by stacks of books. Perhaps they were right. John Adams lived a very different life in Massachusetts. As a lawyer, he believed deeply in fairness and justice. One little-known story reveals something important about his character. In 1770, after the Boston Massacre, Adams agreed to defend British soldiers in court. Many colonists were furious. Some questioned his loyalty. But Adams believed that every person deserved a fair trial, even if defending them made him unpopular. Years later, he would describe that decision as one of the proudest moments of his life. It was a reminder that true principles are often tested during difficult times. Across the colonies, these future founders were slowly earning the trust of their neighbors. Not through dramatic speeches, but through years of steady work. People respected Washington because he was dependable. They respected Franklin because he was wise. They respected Jefferson because he valued learning. They respected Adams because he believed in justice. Trust, after all, is rarely built overnight. As evening returned, candles once again illuminated homes across the colonies. Letters continued traveling from town to town. Ideas continued spreading quietly. No one could yet see the full picture, but the foundation of a new nation was being built. Not with grand ceremonies, but with patience, discipline, and countless ordinary days. And perhaps that is one of history's greatest secrets. The people who change the world are often living what appears to be completely ordinary lives, until history finally catches up with them. The years that followed would bring war, uncertainty, sacrifice, and finally, independence. George Washington would lead an army through extraordinary hardship. Benjamin Franklin would cross the Atlantic to seek support from France. Thomas Jefferson would put revolutionary ideas into words, while John Adams would continue arguing that a new nation needed laws strong enough to protect liberty. But perhaps the most remarkable part of their story is that none of them could see the future clearly. They were simply men living through uncertain days. They made mistakes. They disagreed. They worried about failure. And yet, through countless letters, meetings, arguments, and quiet decisions, they helped create something that would outlive them. When the United States finally became a nation, the Founding Fathers did not step into a finished world. They left behind an unfinished experiment. And that may be the quietest lesson of all. America was not created in a single dramatic moment. It grew slowly, Through ordinary people, difficult choices, long nights, and ideas passed from one person to another. So tonight, as the old stories fade into the distance, imagine those candlelit rooms once again. A wooden desk, a half-finished letter, a quiet window looking out into the darkness. And somewhere beyond that window, a new nation beginning to take shape. The men we remember as founding fathers could not know exactly what their decisions would become. They only knew that the next morning would come, and that they had one more decision to make. And perhaps that is where our story should end. Not with a battle, not with a celebration, but with the quiet sound of a candle burning beside an unfinished page. Good night.